Jiwon Park wiped the sweat from her face as she stepped out of the research station. The twin suns of Kepler 442c burned bright in the orange sky. She had been on this planet for 2 years now, studying the strange animals that lived here. Most of them were small and harmless. Some were dangerous, but they stayed away from the human colony. Today felt different. The air was too quiet. Even the buzzing insects had stopped making noise. Jiwon picked up her scanning device and started walking toward the forest. She was supposed to check the animal traps they had set up last week. The colony needed to know which creatures were safe and which ones might attack the miners. The trees here were tall and purple, with leaves that changed color when the wind touched them. Jiwon had grown up in Seoul, where everything was concrete and steel. This alien world still amazed her. Sometimes she found the first trap empty. The second one, too. That was strange. Usually small animals got caught in them every few days. Jiwon checked her scanner. It showed no movement nearby. Then she heard it. A low, deep sound that made her chest feel heavy. It was not like any animal she knew. Jiwon stopped walking and listened. The sound came again, softer this time. It sounded like pain. Jiwon followed the sound deeper into the forest. Her training told her to go back to the colony and get help. But something about that sound made her keep walking. It reminded her of the dog she used to help when she worked as a vet back on Earth. The trees opened up into a small clearing. Jiwon saw it, and her breath stopped. A massive creature lay on its side in the center of the clearing. It was bigger than the largest bear she had ever seen. Its fur was silver and black, and its body was built like a wolf, but much more powerful. 4 arms ended in claws that could cut through metal. Its head was long and intelligent, with eyes that seemed too smart for an animal. This was a Vorthak. Jiwon had only seen pictures in the database. Everyone said they were just stories. No one had ever proven they existed. But here one was, dying in front of her. The Vorthak's chest rose and fell slowly. Dark blood covered its side where something had torn through its fur. Its eyes looked at Jiwon, and she saw intelligence there. This was not just an animal. This was a thinking being. Jiwon took a step forward. The Vorthak should have attacked her. She was small and weak compared to it, but instead it just watched her with tired eyes. "Easy there," Jiwon said softly, the way she used to talk to scared animals. "I want to help." The Vorthak made a soft, rumbling sound. It tried to lift its head but could not. Jiwon could see it was dying. The wound was too big, and it had lost too much blood. Then she heard smaller sounds from behind the creature. Jiwon walked around carefully, keeping her hands where the Vorthak could see them. Behind the big creature, 3 small forms huddled together. Cubs, baby Vorthak, each about the size of a large dog. They were scared and hungry. Their mother was dying, and they did not know what to do. The mother Vorthak made another sound, louder, this time. She was looking at Jiwon, then at her cubs, then back at Jiwon. Even though they could not speak the same language, Jiwon understood what the creature was asking. "You want me to take care of them?" Jiwon whispered. The mother Vorthak's eyes closed for a moment. When they opened again, she began to move. With great effort, she pushed herself up slightly and used her front paws to push her cubs toward Jiwon. The cubs whimpered and tried to stay close to their mother, but she kept pushing them away from her and toward the human she was giving her, children to an alien creature, because she knew she could not save them herself. Jiwan knelt down slowly. The cubs looked at her with big, frightened eyes. They had fur like their mother, silver and black, but softer. Their claws were small, and their teeth were just beginning to grow. "It's okay," Jiwan said to them. "I won't hurt you." One of the cubs, braver than the others, took a small step toward her. Jiwan held out her hand. The cub sniffed it, then pressed its small head against her palm. The mother Vorthak made a sound that might have been approval. She pushed the other two cubs forward. They were still scared, but they followed their sibling. Jiwan looked at the dying mother. "I promise I will take care of them. I don't know how, but I will try." The Vorthak's eyes met hers one last time. There was gratitude there and something else. Trust. This creature was trusting a human with the most important thing in her life. The mother Vorthak laid her head down and closed her eyes. Her breathing grew slower and slower until it stopped, completely. The cubs made sad crying sounds and tried to go back to their mother. Jiwan gently picked them up, one by one. They were heavier than they looked, but they did not fight her. Somehow they seemed to understand that she was their only hope now. Jiwan stood up with the three cubs in her arms. She looked at the dead, Vorthak one more time. "I will remember you," she said quietly. The walk back to the colony took longer than usual. The cubs were heavy, and Jiwan had to stop several times to rest. They stayed quiet, pressed against her chest. She could feel their small hearts beating fast. When the colony buildings came into view, Jiwan realized she had a big problem. No one was going to be happy about this. The colony rules said no dangerous animals were allowed inside the safe zone, and Vorthak were supposed to be the most dangerous creatures on the planet. But as she looked down at the three small faces, looking back at her, Jiwan knew she had made the right choice. These were not dangerous monsters. They were babies who needed help. Security Chief Minho Lee met her at the gate. His eyes went wide when he saw what she was carrying. "Dr. Park, what are those?" he asked. "Cubs," Jiwan said simply. "Their mother died. They need food and shelter." Minho looked nervous. "Those look like Vorthak cubs. We can't have them in the colony. They're too dangerous." "They're babies," Jiwan said firmly, "and they're my responsibility now." She walked past Minho toward her lab. The cubs had chosen her, and she had chosen them. Now she had to figure out how to keep them alive in a world that would fear them. Behind her, she could hear Minho talking into his radio, calling for Administrator Hyun-woo Kim. Soon, everyone in the colony would know about the cubs. But for now, Jiwan just focused on the three small lives in her arms. They had lost their mother, but they had found something new. They had found a human who would not abandon them. The real adventure was just beginning. 3 months had passed since Jiwan brought the cubs to the colony. Administrator Hyun-woo Kim had tried to make her give them up. The other colonists were afraid. They wanted the cubs sent away or put in cages. But Jiwan refused to give up on them. She had turned her lab into a home for the three cubs. She named them Baek, Dal, and Hanul. Baek was the brave one who had touched her hand first. Dal was the smallest, but the fastest. Hanil was quiet and always stayed close to Jiwan. The cubs grew quickly. They were now the size of large dogs, but much stronger. Their teeth were sharp, and their claws could scratch metal. But they were gentle with Jiwan. They seemed to understand that humans were fragile. Every morning, Jiwan would wake up with all three cubs sleeping around her bed. They followed her everywhere she went. When she worked at her computer, they lay at her feet. When she ate, they sat beside her chair and waited for their own food. The cubs learned fast. They understood simple words like sit and stay and come here. But they also learned things Jiwan never taught them. They knew when she was sad and would press close to her. They could tell when someone was afraid of them and would stay away from that person. Most of the colonists still did not trust the cubs. They crossed to the other side of the hallway when they saw them coming. Parents pulled their children away. Only a few people understood that the cubs were not dangerous. Dr. Wanho Choi, the colony doctor, was one of the people who feared them most. Those creatures will kill someone, he told Jiwan. It's in their nature. You can't change what they are. They're not just creatures, Jiwan replied. They're intelligent. They can learn and choose how to act. Wild animals can't be trusted, Dr. Choi said, especially predators. But Jiwan was starting to see that the cubs were more than just smart animals. They seemed to understand human emotions in ways that even Earth dogs could not. When engineer Yoonji Nam felt sick one day, Hanul stayed close to her and would not leave her side. When young Subin Lee was scared of the dark, Dal started sleeping outside her family's quarters. The cubs were becoming part of the human community, even though most humans did not want them there. Then came the day that changed everything. Jiwan was in her lab checking data from the mining sites. The cubs were playing in the corner with some old equipment. Suddenly, all three of them stopped what they were doing. Their ears went up and they looked toward the wall. "What is it?" Jiwan asked. The cubs ran to the door and started making worried sounds. Baek looked back at Jiwan and then at the door, like he was trying to tell her something important. Then the alarm started blaring. The colony's emergency siren meant only one thing: attack. Jiwan grabbed her radio. "What's happening?" "Raiders," came Minho Lee's voice. "Unknown ships attacking the South mining site. All security teams respond." Jiwan's heart raced. The South mining site was where most of the families lived. Subin Lee and her father Minho were there. So was engineer Yoonji Nam. The cubs were already at the door, scratching to get out. They could sense the danger and they wanted to help. "No," Jiwan said. "It's too dangerous. You have to stay here," but the cubs would not listen. Baek pushed against the door with his shoulder. Dal found the door control and hit it with his paw. Before Jiwan could stop them, all three cubs were running down the hallway toward the exit. Jiwan followed them, but they were much faster than she was. By the time she reached the main door, they were already outside and running toward the mining site. At the mining site, chaos ruled. Strange alien ships flew overhead, shooting energy beams at the buildings. The raiders wore armor and carried weapons that could cut through metal. They moved like professional soldiers. Security Chief Minho Lee and his team were trying to fight back, but they were outnumbered. Families hid in the shelters while the battle raged outside. Then something went wrong. One of the raider ships crashed into the main shelter building. The structure began to collapse. People were trapped inside, including Minho's daughter Subin. Minho tried to reach her, but more raiders blocked his way. He could hear Subin calling for help, but he could not get to her. That was when the cubs arrived. The three young Vorthak moved like they had trained together their whole lives. Beck went left, Dal went right, and Hanul went straight forward. They did not attack randomly like wild animals. They worked together like a team. The raiders had never seen anything like them. These were not the small animals they expected on human colonies. The cubs were fast, smart, and coordinated. They used the broken buildings for cover and attacked from different directions at the same time. While the cubs kept the raiders busy, Minho ran to the collapsed shelter. The entrance was blocked by heavy metal beams. He could not move them alone. Beck appeared beside him. The young Vorthak looked at the beams, then at Minho, then back at the beams. Without being asked, Beck grabbed one of the beams in his strong jaws and pulled. His claws dug into the ground as he used all his strength. Minho understood. He grabbed another beam and pulled with Beck. Together, they cleared the entrance. Subin was inside, scared but not hurt. Minho pulled his daughter out and held her tight. "The creature saved me," Subin whispered, looking at Beck with wide eyes. Meanwhile, Dal and Hanul had chased off most of the raiders. The alien soldiers were not, used to fighting enemies that could think and plan like humans but move like predators. They retreated to their ships and flew away. When Jiwan finally reached the mining site, she found the cubs sitting calmly with the human defenders. Minho was talking to his security team, but he kept looking at Bayek with a new expression on his face. "They saved us," Engineer Yunjinam told Jiwan. "Your cubs fought like they were part of our team." Dr. Wanho Choi was there too, treating injured people. He looked at the cubs differently now. "I was wrong about them," he said quietly to Jiwan. "They're not just animals. They chose to help us." That evening, Administrator Hyun-woo Kim called a colony meeting. Everyone came, even the people who had been most afraid of the cubs. "Today we learned something important," Hyun-woo said. "These cubs are not our enemies. They are our defenders. Dr. Park was right to trust them." Minho stood up. "My daughter is alive because of them. They risked their own lives to save humans. They barely know. That makes them family in my book." One by one, other colonists spoke up. They told stories of small kindnesses the cubs had shown them. How Dal had found a lost tool. How Hanul had comforted a crying child. How Bak had warned people about dangerous areas. The cubs sat next to Jiwan during the meeting. They seemed to understand that this was important. When the colonists voted to let them stay permanently, Bak made a soft, happy sound. After the meeting, young Subin Lee came up to Jiwan. "Can I pet him?" she asked, pointing at Beck. Jiwan looked at Beck, who lowered his head so Subin could reach him easier. The little girl gently touched his fur. "Thank you for saving me," Subin whispered to Beck. Beck pressed his head against her hand, just like he had done with Jiwan 3 months ago in the forest. Later that night, as Jiwan got ready for bed, she watched the 3 cubs. They were no longer just animals she was taking care of. They had become something new. They were a pack, and she was part of it. But more than that, they had shown the colony something amazing. Humans and Vorthak could work together. They could trust each other. They could become a team that was stronger than either species alone. The cubs had chosen to protect the humans, and now the humans had chosen to accept them. It was the beginning of something that had never happened before in the galaxy. It was the beginning of a new kind of family that crossed the lines between species. As Jiwan fell asleep with the cubs around her bed, she wondered what would happen next. She did not know that their story would soon spread to other worlds. She did not know that other creatures would come looking for them. All she knew was that she had kept her promise to a dying mother. She had taken care of the cubs, and they had taken care of her colony in return. The pack was forming, and it was stronger than anyone had imagined. 1 year later, the cubs were no longer cubs. Beck, Dal, and Hanul had grown into powerful young adults. Each one now weighed as much as a small car, but they moved with grace and speed that amazed everyone who saw them. The colony had changed, too. People no longer feared the Vorthok. Children played games with them. Workers asked them for help with heavy lifting. The three had become part of daily life on Kepler 442c, but Ji-Won noticed something new about her pack. They were getting restless. They would stand at the edge of the colony and look toward the stars. Sometimes they made low sounds that seemed like they were calling to something far away. "They're growing up," Engineer Yoonji Nam said one day as she watched Hanul practice jumping between buildings. "Maybe they need more than just colony life." Ji-Won worried about this too. On Earth, young wolves left their pack to find their own territory. Would her three eventually leave her? The thought made her sad, but she wanted them to be happy. Then the reports started coming in. Captain Yuna Song arrived from the Galactic Defense Force with bad news. Human colonies were being attacked by a group called the Void Reapers. These space pirates were not like the small raiders who had attacked the mining site. They were organized, brutal, and they seemed to hate humans specifically. "They've hit 12 colonies in the past month," Captain Song told Administrator Hyun-woo Kim and the Colony Council. "They don't just steal things, they destroy everything. They want to wipe out human settlements completely." Ji-Won listened to the briefing with growing worry. The Void Reapers had ships, weapons, and soldiers that far outnumbered what any single colony could defend against. "What do they want?" Min-Ho Lee asked. "We're not sure," Captain Song replied. "Their leader calls himself Krextoth. He claims humans are a disease that needs to be removed from the galaxy. He's gathering more ships every day." That night, Ji-Won could not sleep. She walked to the observation deck where Beck, Dal, and Hanul often went to look at the stars. All three of them were there, standing perfectly still and looking up at the night sky. "You can sense them, can't you?" Ji-Won asked, quietly. "You know there's danger coming." Beck turned to look at her. His eyes were intelligent and serious. He made a low sound that Ji-Won had learned meant yes. Dal moved to stand beside Ji-Won. He was the fastest of the three, and he had grown into the scout of their pack. He looked toward the edge of the star system and made a worried sound. Hanul, the largest and strongest, came to Ji-Won's other side. He had always been the protector. Now he seemed ready to protect not just Ji-Won, but the entire colony. "If the Void Reapers come here, we'll fight them," Ji-Won said. "All of us, together." The three Vorthak made soft rumbling sounds. It was the sound they made when they agreed with her. 2 weeks later, the attack came. The alarm woke everyone in. The middle of the night. This time it was not just 1 or 2 raider ships. The sky filled with enemy vessels, more than anyone had ever seen before. "Void Reapers!" Min-Ho Lee's voice came over the radio. "All defenses activate! This is not a drill!" Ji-Won ran to her lab where she kept her emergency gear. The 3 Vorthak were already there, waiting for her. They wore the special harnesses Engineer Yoonji had made for them, with communication devices and protective armor. "Are you ready?" Ji-Won asked them. All 3 nodded. They had been training for this moment without even knowing it. Every game they played, every exercise they did, had prepared them to work as a team with humans. The battle was unlike anything the colony had ever faced. The Void Reapers came in waves, their ships shooting energy beams that could melt metal. Their soldiers wore heavy armor and carried weapons that could punch holes through walls. But the defenders had something the Void Reapers did not expect. They had a pack. Ji-Wan coordinated the defense from the command center, while Beck, Dal, and Hanel moved like shadows through the colony. They could sense where the enemies were before the humans could see them. They communicated with each other in ways that no electronic device could detect. Dal found a group of enemy soldiers trying to sneak into the main power station. He did not attack immediately. Instead, he called to his pack brothers. Within minutes, all three Vorthak had surrounded the soldiers. The enemies found themselves facing creatures that hunted like wolves, but thought like humans. Beck blocked their escape route. Hanel came at them from the front. Dal circled around to cut off their retreat to their ship, but the most amazing thing was how they worked with the human defenders. When Security Chief Minho and his team arrived, the Vorthak had already positioned the enemies exactly where the humans could capture them safely. "How did they know we were coming?" one of Minho's soldiers asked. "They didn't just know," Minho replied, watching the three Vorthak take new positions. "They planned for it." The battle continued through the night. The Void Reapers kept sending more soldiers, but they could not understand what they were fighting. Every time they thought they had found a weakness in the human defenses, the Vorthak pack would appear and change everything. The enemy soldiers started to get scared. They had fought humans before and won easily. But these were not just humans. This was something new, something they had never trained to fight against. By morning, the Void Reapers retreated. They had lost more soldiers and equipment than they had ever lost in a single battle. But worse than that, they had lost their confidence. Captain Yuna Song arrived 3 days later with a full Defense Force team. She studied the battle reports with amazement. "This is impossible," she said to Ji-Wan. "A single colony held off a full Void Reaper assault fleet." "How?" Ji-Wan looked at Beck, Dal, and Hanul, who were resting in the sunshine after the battle. "We had help from our pack." Captain, Song watched the three Vorthak for a long time. She saw how they moved together, how they responded to Ji-Wan's smallest gestures, how they seemed to know what each other was thinking. "Dr. Park," Captain Song said slowly, "I need to ask you something important. Would you and your pack be willing to help other colonies? We're fighting a war, and what you have here might be the key to winning it." Ji-Wan looked at her three companions. They had grown from scared cubs into magnificent hunters. But more than that, they had become her family. The decision had to be theirs, too. "What do you think?" she asked them. "Do you want to help protect other humans?" Back stood up and walked to Captain Song. He looked at her for a moment, then sat down beside her. It was his way of saying yes. Dal and Hanul followed their pack leader. Within moments, all three Vorthak were sitting calmly beside the Defense Force captain. "I think that's your answer," Ji-Wan said with a smile. Captain Song reached out carefully and touched Beck's head. "I've never seen anything like this. You've created something totally new." "We didn't create it," Ji-Wan replied. "It created itself. We just learned to trust each other." That night, as Ji-Wan prepared for their first mission away from the colony, she thought about how far they had all come. A year ago, she had been just a scientist studying animals. Now she was the leader of the first human Vorthak pack in galactic history. The cubs she had rescued were now legendary hunters, but they were still her family. They still slept around her bed and followed her everywhere she went. The difference was that now they had a purpose that was bigger than just surviving. They had become protectors of all humans, not just their own colony. As she fell asleep with her pack around her, Ji-Wan could hear ships landing outside. Other Defense Force teams were arriving. Tomorrow they would leave Kepler 442c for the first time since the cubs had been born. They were going to hunt the Void Reapers across the galaxy, and this time the hunters would become the hunted. The real war was about to begin, and humanity had just gained its most powerful allies. Not through technology or weapons, but through trust, loyalty, and the bonds of an unlikely family. The pack was ready to hunt. 2 years had passed since Jiwon and her pack joined the Galactic Defense Force. They had become famous across human space. Stories spread about the woman who led 3 giant alien hunters like they were loyal dogs. Other colonies wanted their own Vorthak packs. But finding wild Vorthak was not easy. Most of them lived on dangerous worlds far from human settlements, and even when Defense Force teams found them, the adult Vorthak would not trust humans the way Bayek, Dal, and Hanul did. Jiwon's pack had grown too. They now worked with 12 other human Vorthak teams across the galaxy. Each team had learned from what Jiwon had discovered on Kepler 442c, but none of the other packs were as close as her original 3. Dr. Sunmi Kang, a scientist who studied alien behavior, came to observe Jiwon's pack during their latest mission. "This is remarkable," Dr. Kang said as she watched Dal and Hanul coordinate an attack on a Void Reaper base. "They don't just follow your orders, they make their own decisions and trust you to understand what they're doing." "That's what family does," Jiwon replied. "We trust each other." But Dr. Kang looked worried. "Dr. Park, there's something you need to know. Adult Vorthak are very territorial. In the wild, young adults leave their birth pack and fight for their own territory. Your 3 should have challenged you for leadership by now." Jiwon watched Bayek leading a group of human soldiers around the enemy base. He moved with confidence and power. He was definitely an adult now, stronger than any human and smart enough to lead his own pack. "Maybe they're different because they grew up with humans," Jiwon suggested. "Maybe," Dr. Kang said. "But what happens when they meet other Vorthak who haven't grown up with humans? What happens when wild Vorthak challenge their right to follow a human leader?" Jiwon did not have an answer to that question, but she was about to find out. The answer came 3 weeks later on a planet called Nexus 7. The Defense Force had set up a training base there for new human Vorthak teams. Jiwon was teaching other humans how to work with their Vorthak partners when the sensors detected something unusual. A ship was approaching the planet. It was not a human ship or a Void Reaper ship. It was something else entirely. Captain Yuna. Song met Jiwon at the landing pad. "We've never seen a ship like this before," she said. "It's big, and it's sending out some kind of biological signal." Beck, Dal, and Hanul were already at the landing pad, standing perfectly still and staring at the sky. Their ears were up, and they were making low sounds that Jiwon had never heard before. "What is it?" Jiwon asked them. Beck looked at her with troubled eyes. He made a sound that meant family, but also danger at the same time. The ship landed. With a sound like thunder, it was huge and shaped like no human technology Jiwon had ever seen. The hull seemed to be made of some kind of organic material that shifted and moved like it was alive. A door opened in the side of the ship. What came out made Jiwon's breath stop. It was a Vorthak, but unlike any she had ever seen. This one was massive, even bigger than Hanul. Its fur was pure black with silver streaks. Scars covered its body, showing it had fought many battles. Its eyes were intelligent but cold. Behind the giant Vorthak came others, 6 more adults, all wild and powerful. They moved like they owned whatever ground they stepped on. The lead Vorthak looked across the landing pad until its eyes found Bayek, Dal, and Hanol. Then it made a sound that was part roar and part challenge. G1's 3 pack members did not move. They stood their ground, but G1 could see they were tense and ready for trouble. Dr. Junho Lim, the xenopsychologist, came running up with his scanner. "The biosignals are incredible," he said. "That big one is sending out pheromones that basically say, 'I am the alpha here.'" The giant Vorthak started walking toward G1 and her pack. Its steps were slow and deliberate. Every other Vorthak on the base, including the ones working with human partners, began backing away, but Bayek, Dal, and Hanul did not back away. They moved to stand between the wild alpha and G1. The alpha stopped just a few meters away. It looked at G1's 3 pack members and made a series of sounds that were clearly meant to be understood. Dr. Lim checked his translator. "He's saying something like, 'You are my kind. Why do you serve the weak ones?'" Beck answered with his own sounds. Dr. Lim's face went pale as he listened to the translation. Beck just said, "She is not weak. She is our alpha." The wild alpha made a sound that was definitely laughter, but not the good kind. It spoke again. "He says that's impossible," Dr. Lim translated. "He says no soft creature can lead true hunters. He's challenging G1's right to be their pack leader." The tension on the landing pad was thick enough to cut. Human soldiers had their weapons ready, but G1 knew this was not a fight that guns could solve. The wild alpha stepped closer to G1. Up close, she could see how powerful it was. Its claws could cut through steel. Its teeth could bite through bone. If it wanted to hurt her, no human could stop it fast enough. But G1 did not step back. She had learned long ago that showing fear to a predator was the worst thing you could do. "I am their alpha," she said calmly. "Not because I am the strongest, but because they choose to follow me." The wild alpha made a dismissive sound. It turned to face Bayek and made what was clearly a challenge. Dr. Lim did not need to translate. The meaning was obvious. "Fight me. Prove you are worthy to lead." But Beck did not accept the challenge the way the alpha expected. Instead, he made a different sound and gestured toward the training ground where human and Vorthak teams were, practicing. "What is he doing?" Captain Song asked. G1 understood before anyone else did. "He's not going to fight the alpha. He's going to show him something." Beck led the group to the training ground. The other wild Vorthak followed, curious about what these strange pack members would do. On the training ground, a mock Void Reaper base had been set up. Human soldiers and their Vorthak partners were practicing attack strategies. Beck looked at the wild alpha, then at G1. His meaning was clear. Watch and learn. What happened next was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. Bayek, Dal, and Hanul spread out around the mock base, but they did not attack randomly like wild predators. They waited for signals from G1. G1 used hand gestures and quiet sounds to coordinate the attack. The 3 Vorthak moved like they were extensions of her own body. They flanked the enemy positions, cut off escape routes, and struck at exactly the right moments. But the most impressive part was how they worked with the human soldiers. When the humans needed cover, the Vorthak provided it. When the Vorthak needed support, the humans were there. They moved as one unit, each member using their strengths to help the others. The mock battle was over in minutes. The enemy base was captured without a single casualty. It was the kind of perfect coordination that took years to develop. The wild Alpha watched all of this in silence. The other wild Vorthak made sounds of amazement. They had never seen hunting like this before. The Alpha approached G1 again. This time its body language was different. It was still proud and powerful, but it was also curious. It made a sound toward G1. Dr. Lim translated carefully. "He's asking how you taught them to hunt like this." "I didn't teach them," G1 replied. "We learned together. They taught me, as much as I taught them." The Alpha tilted its head, considering this. It made another sound. "He says this is not the way of the hunt," Dr. Lim translated. "He says the strong should lead and the weak should follow." Beck answered before G1 could speak. His response was long and complex, full of sounds that showed emotion as well as meaning. Dr. Lim's eyes went wide as he listened. Beck is telling him about the colony, about how G1 raised them from cubs, about how they chose to protect humans. He's saying that strength is not just about fighting, it's about caring for your pack. The Alpha listened to all of this. Then it did something unexpected. It sat down. In Vorthak body language, sitting was a sign of respect. Not submission, but recognition that the other party had something valuable to say. The Alpha made a new sound, gentler this time. "He wants to understand," Dr. Lim said. "He's asking to stay and watch how the pack works." Over the next week, the wild Vorthak stayed at the base. They watched the human Vorthak teams train. They saw how the partnerships worked. They observed the trust and cooperation that made the team stronger than either species could be alone. Slowly, the Alpha began to understand. This was not about weakness or strength. This was about evolution. The humans and Vorthak, who worked together, had become something new, something better than what they were apart. On the last day, the Alpha approached G1 one final time. It made a sound that needed no translation. It was the sound of acknowledgement. Then, it did something that amazed everyone watching. It lowered its head to G1 in a gesture of respect. "He's accepting your leadership," Dr. Lim whispered. "Not just over your pack, but as an Alpha worthy of respect." The Alpha and its followers left that day, but not before two of the younger wild Vorthak chose to stay. They wanted to learn this new way of hunting and living. That night, as G1 sat with Bayek, Dal, and Hanol under the alien stars, she realized something important had happened. They had not just won a challenge. They had started something that would change both species forever. "You could have fought him," G1 said to Bayek. "You could have proven you were strong enough to be an Alpha yourself." The war against the Void Reapers had reached a turning point. For 3 years, they had terrorized human colonies across the galaxy. But now humanity had something the pirates could not understand or fight against. The packs. G1 stood on the bridge of the battleship New Sol, looking at the tactical display. 30 human colonies now had their own Vorthak packs. Over 200 of the great hunters worked alongside human teams. The enemy had stopped their random attacks and retreated to a massive fortress in the Kepler 186 system. Admiral Sunbok Yoon, the highest commander in the Galactic Defense Force, studied the intelligence reports with a grim expression. "Krextoth has gathered his entire fleet," the Admiral said. "Over 500 ships, all armed with bioweapons that can poison entire planets. If we don't stop him here, he'll destroy every human world in this sector." G1's original pack had grown too. Beck now led 12 Vorthak, who had learned to work with human teams. Dal commanded the scout units that moved faster than any ship. Hanul had become the protector of the pack leaders, keeping them safe during the most dangerous missions. But the Great Hunt, as the final battle came to be called, would be different from anything they had faced before. "The Void Reapers know about our packs now," Captain Unisong explained to the assembled pack leaders. "They've developed new weapons designed specifically to hurt Vorthak, and they've brought something else." The display showed images that made everyone in the room go quiet. Massive cages filled with creatures that looked like twisted versions of Earth's most dangerous predators. Battle beasts. Dr. Sun-Mi Kang identified them. "The Void Reapers have been collecting and changing dangerous animals from across the galaxy. They're going to use them against our packs." Ji-Won felt her 3 original pack members tense beside her. They could sense the wrongness in those images. These were not natural hunters. They were creatures driven mad by artificial changes and drugs. "How many?" Ji-Won asked. "Our best estimate is over 1,000 battle beasts," Admiral Yoon replied, "plus their fleet and their bioweapons. This won't be a battle. It'll be the largest hunt in galactic history." That night, Ji-Won walked through the ship's pack quarters. Human Vorthak teams from dozens of worlds were preparing for battle. She saw things that would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. Young Subin Lee, now 16 and grown into a confident pack coordinator, was checking equipment with her partner, a Vorthak named Storm. Minho Lee's daughter had become one of the best pack leaders in the Defense Force. Engineer Eunji Nam had designed new communication devices that let humans and Vorthak share thoughts during battle. The technology was based on studying how Ji-Won's original pack worked together. Dr. Won-Ho Choi, who had once feared the Cubs, now served as the chief medical officer for all human Vorthak teams. He had learned to treat both species and understood their bond better than almost anyone. But tomorrow, all of that might end. If they failed, the Void Reapers would destroy every human world they could reach. Ji-Won found Beck, Dal, and Hanul on the observation deck, looking toward the enemy system. They were no longer the cubs she had raised. Each one was now a magnificent adult, scarred from battles, but still loyal to their human pack. "Are you ready for this?" she asked them. Beck turned to look at her. In his eyes, she saw the same intelligence and trust that had been there when he first touched her hand as a cub. He made a soft sound that meant, "Always ready with you." Dal and Hanul pressed close to her sides. They had faced raiders and pirates and dangerous creatures. But this felt different. This felt final. The battle began at dawn, ship time. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 186 system. Immediately, alarms started blaring as hundreds of Void Reaper ships moved to intercept them. But the humans did not attack the way the enemy expected. Instead of charging forward with their battleships, they released small, fast ships that carried the human Vorthak packs. The packs moved through space like hunters tracking prey through a forest. They used asteroids and debris for cover. They struck at enemy ships from unexpected angles. They coordinated their attacks across the entire battlefield. Ji-Won's pack led the assault on the main fortress. It was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid with weapon platforms and shield generators protecting it from normal attacks. "Dal, find us a way in," Ji-Won ordered through her communicator. Dal and his scout team moved ahead of the main force. His pack of 6 Vorthak could sense weak points in the fortress defenses that human sensors missed. They found ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels that were too small for ships but perfect for hunting teams. Entry points marked Dal's human. Partner pilot Min Jae Han reported. But they're swarming with battle beasts. That was when the real horror began. The twisted creatures the Void Reapers had created were nothing like natural predators. They had been changed with drugs and surgery to be more aggressive, more violent, more deadly. But they had also been made unstable and unpredictable. The first wave of battle beasts poured out of the fortress like a living nightmare, creatures with too many teeth and claws that dripped poison, things that moved like spiders but were the size of bears, flying horrors that screamed as they attacked. But the human Vorthak packs were ready for them. "Remember your training," Jiwan broadcast to all pack leaders. "They're not real hunters. They're just weapons. Weapons can be broken." What followed was the largest coordinated hunt in the history of any species. Over 200 Vorthak and their human partners moved through the fortress like a living storm. They used tactics that combined human strategy with Vorthak instincts. Beck led his team through the upper levels, clearing weapon platforms and shield generators. His pack moved with perfect coordination, each member knowing exactly what the others would do. Hanul and his defensive team protected the human technical crews who were trying to shut down the fortress's main systems. When battle beasts attacked, Hanul's pack formed an unbreakable wall of claws and determination. Dal's scouts found the most important target, Krextoth himself, the leader of the Void Reapers in the fortress's command center. "He's got the bioweapon controls," Minje reported. "If he activates them, every human world in this sector will be poisoned." Jiwan and her original pack fought their way through waves of battle beasts to reach the command center. The corridors were narrow and filled with enemies, but they had trained for exactly this kind of close-quarters combat. When they finally reached Krextoth, Jiwan was shocked by what she saw. The Void Reaper leader was not the proud warrior she had expected. He was a broken creature, more machine than living being, connected to his ship by cables and tubes. "You're too late," Krextoth said in a voice like grinding metal. "The bioweapons are already launching. Your kind will burn, and I will watch it happen." But Jiwan smiled. "You made one mistake," she said. "You never understood what we really are." That was when the rest of the plan became clear. While Jiwan's pack had been fighting through the fortress, Dal's scouts had been doing something else. They had been tracking the bioweapon ships by scent and electromagnetic signatures. All across the battlefield, human Vorthak teams struck at the weapon ships before they could reach their targets. The packs could sense the unnatural chemicals in the bioweapons and track them through space in ways that no technology could match. One by one, the weapon ships were destroyed or captured. The massive fleet that was supposed to destroy human civilization was being taken apart by small teams of hunters who fought like they had one shared mind. Krextoth watched his plans fall apart on his command screens. "Impossible," he whispered. "You're just prey animals. Prey cannot hunt the hunters." "We're not prey," Jiwan said as Beck, Dal, and Hanul surrounded the Void Reaper leader. "We're pack, and pack is stronger than any individual hunter." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Void Reaper fleet was destroyed and their bioweapons were neutralized. The threat that had terrorized human space for years was finally ended. But the victory came with a cost. 7 human Vorthak teams had been lost in the fighting. 23 humans and 18 Vorthak had died protecting their pack mates and their colonies. Among the lost was Dal, Jiwan's fastest. Scout had died protecting a group of young pack members from a battle beast that had broken through their defenses. He had saved 6 lives by sacrificing his own. That night, on the journey home, Jiwan sat with Beck and Hanul in the ship's quiet observation room. The three survivors of her original pack pressed close together, mourning their lost brother. "He died as he lived," Jiwon said softly, "protecting his pack." Beck made a sound that meant honor and memory and love all at once. In Vorthak culture, those who died protecting their pack were never truly gone. They lived on in the strength and unity of those they had saved. The great hunt was over. The Void Reapers were defeated, but more importantly, something new had been born in the galaxy. Human and Vorthak packs now protected dozens of worlds. Children of both species grew up together, learning to trust and work as one. The evolution that had started with 3 cubs and 1 caring human had spread across the stars. As Ji-won fell asleep with her remaining pack around her, she thought about how far they had all come. From a dying mother's desperate gift to the largest coordinated hunt in galactic history. 5 years had passed since the Great Hunt ended the Void Reaper threat. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have imagined when Ji-won first found 3 cubs in an alien forest. Ji-won Park was no longer just a xenobiologist. She had become the first official pack mother in galactic history, recognized by both human and alien governments as the founder of a new kind of civilization. Her hair was now streaked with gray, and scars from many battles marked her hands, but her eyes still held the same gentle strength that had convinced a dying Vorthak to trust her with her cubs. The colony on Kepler 442c had grown into a city. Where once there had been simple research buildings, now there were schools where human children and young Vorthak learned together. Parks where families of both species played. Training centers where new pack coordinators learned to form bonds with their Vorthak partners. Beck and Hanul, now mature adults with cubs of their own, still lived with Ji-won. Their children, the first generation of Vorthak born into human-led packs, were smaller than their parents but just as intelligent. They played games that combined human creativity with Vorthak hunting instincts. The morning that would change everything again started like any other. Ji-won was teaching a class of new pack coordinators when the alarms began to sound. But these were not battle alarms. These were the signals that meant important visitor arriving. Administrator Hyunwoo Kim, now the governor of the entire Kepler system, met Ji-won at the landing pad with an expression of nervous excitement. "Who's coming?" Ji-won asked as she watched a ship unlike any she had ever seen descend from the sky. "Someone who says they need to speak with the human who leads the hunt," Hyunwoo replied. "The message came in Old Vorthak, the ceremonial language. Our translators say it's from someone very important. The ship that landed was ancient, but magnificent. It was carved from what looked like a single piece of dark stone, covered with symbols that seemed to move and shift in the light." As Ji-won watched, a door opened that had no visible hinges or mechanisms. What emerged made everyone on the landing pad step backward in awe. It was a Vorthak, but one so old and massive that it seemed to belong to a different age entirely. Its fur was white as snow, and its eyes held the wisdom of centuries. Scars covered its body, but these were not battle scars. They were ritual markings that showed this creature had achieved the highest status in Vorthak society. Behind the ancient Vorthak came others, but they stayed near their ship like an honor guard. Dr. Junho Lim, still the colony's xenopsychologist after all these years, checked his advanced translator with shaking hands. "That's an elder," he whispered to Ji-won. "The oldest and most respected leaders of the Vorthak species. They're supposed to be myths. No one has seen one in over 1,000 years." The elder moved slowly across the landing pad, its ancient eyes taking in everything. The human buildings, the mixed families playing in the distance, the young Vorthak wearing harnesses designed by human engineers. Bayek and Hanul had arrived with their cubs. They approached the elder with respect, but without fear. Their own cubs, curious and brave like their grandmother in spirit, peered out from behind their parents. The elder stopped in front of Jiwan and studied her for a long moment. When it finally spoke, its voice was deep and ancient, carrying the weight of ages. Dr. Lim translated carefully. It says, "So you are the one who has corrupted my children." Jiwan felt her heart sink. After everything they had accomplished, after all the lives saved and bonds formed, was this elder here to destroy what they had built? But before she could respond, something unexpected happened. One of Bayek's cubs, a young female named Nuri, stepped forward. She was barely a year old, small even for a young Vorthak, but she looked up at the ancient elder without fear. Nuri made a sound that was part question and part challenge. Dr. Lim's eyes went wide as he translated. She's asking the elder why he thinks love is corruption. The elder looked down at the small cub with surprise. In the old ways, young Vorthak did not speak to elders without permission, but Nuri had been raised in the pack, where every voice mattered. The elder made a sound that asked for clarification. Nuri responded with a longer series of sounds. Her mother, Jura, Bayek's mate, moved to support her daughter. Bayek himself stepped forward, ready to defend his cub if necessary. Dr. Lim struggled to translate the complex emotional content. She's telling the elder about the pack, about how humans and Vorthak take care of each other. She's saying that making your family bigger isn't corruption, it's evolution. The elder's expression was unreadable. It turned to look at the human children playing with young Vorthak in the distance. It watched adult humans and Vorthak working together on construction projects. It observed the easy cooperation that had become natural for this mixed community. Then the elder spoke again, this time directing its words at Jiwan. It's asking you to prove that what you've created is truly better than the old ways, Dr. Lim translated. It wants to see a demonstration of pack unity. Jiwan understood what was being asked. This was not a request for a training exercise or a simple display. This was a test of everything the packs represented. Bek, Hanul, she said quietly. Gather the family. What happened next would have seemed like magic to anyone who didn't understand pack bonds. Without using radios or communication devices, word spread throughout the colony. Pack members of both species began moving toward the landing pad. They came from the schools where they taught together, from the workshops where they built together, from the homes where they lived as extended families. Humans and Vorthak, adults and children, original colonists and newcomers who had come to learn about pack life. Within an hour, over 300 beings had assembled on the landing pad. They arranged themselves not in formal ranks, but in natural, family groups. Human children sat beside Vorthak cubs. Elderly humans shared space with ancient Vorthak who had joined the packs in recent years. Jiwan stood in the center with Bek, Hanul, and their extended family. She looked at the elder and said simply, "This is our pack." The elder walked slowly among the assembled families. It saw things that challenged everything it had believed about the nature of its species. It saw young Vorthak who could use tools and solve problems in ways their ancestors never could. It saw humans who moved with the coordinated grace of pack hunters. But most importantly, It saw the bonds between them. These were not master and servant relationships. These were not temporary alliances. These were true family connections that crossed species lines. The elder stopped in front of Subin Lee, now a young woman and one of the most skilled pack coordinators in the galaxy. Her partner, a magnificent Vorthak named Thunder, stood beside her with their combined team of humans and Vorthak. "Show me," the elder said in careful, accented human speech that surprised everyone. Subin nodded to her team. What followed was a demonstration of coordination that seemed to flow like water. The mixed team moved through a complex series of exercises that showed trust, communication, and unity. But it was not a performance put on for the elders' benefit. It was simply how they naturally worked together. The elder watched all of this in silence. Then it did something that no one expected. It sat down in the center of the assembled pack and made a sound that was both ancient and new. Dr. Lim's translator took a moment to process the complex meaning. It's calling them all children of evolution. The elder spoke again, this time in a mix of old Vorthak and human words. "I came here to stop what I thought was the corruption of my people. But I see now that this is not corruption. This is growth." The ancient creature looked directly at Jiwon. "You have done something that no one in the history of our species thought possible. You have made us better by making us part of something larger." Over the following days, the elder walked throughout the colony, observing pack life in detail. It saw human Vorthak families raising children together. It watched mixed teams work on problems that neither species could solve alone. It observed the natural way that cooperation had replaced competition. On its last day, the elder gathered the entire community for a final ceremony. Using the ancient ritual language of the Vorthak, it formally recognized Jiwon as a mother of evolution, a title that had never existed before, but that somehow felt perfectly right. "The old ways served their purpose," the elder said in its closing words, "but evolution does not look backward. It looks forward, and the future belongs to the packs." When the elder's ship departed, it carried something new: 6 young Vorthak, and 6 young humans who would travel to other worlds to teach about pack life. The evolution that had started on Kepler 442c was spreading to the stars. That evening, Jiwon sat in her favorite spot on the observation deck. Bayek and Hanno lay beside her, their cubs playing quietly nearby. The sounds of the colony, human voices, Vorthak calls, the laughter of mixed families, drifted up from below. "Do you ever think about that day in the forest?" Jiwon asked her. 2 remaining original pack members. "When your mother first trusted me with her cubs," Beck made a soft sound that meant always remember and always grateful. Hanul pressed his great head against her shoulder, a gesture that said, "Family forever." Jiwon watched the stars appear in the alien sky. She thought about how far they had all come.